Welcome all. Hello, Sisa and Ntshona. He's the CEO of South African Tourism. Sisa, lovely to see you. You've had such a busy time, and you and I have been chatting quite a bit with AAVEA's input into the COVID-19 protocols. Welcome on board. Lovely to have you here. Fantastic. Ingrid Sinclair is from Two Oceans Aquarium here in Cape Town. Welcome, Ingrid. Lovely to see you. And Louise Gordon is from the Johannesburg Zoo. Hi, Louise. Lovely to see you.
Hi, Louise.
So we're going to start off with just a quick introduction to your site. And Sisa, perhaps just, well, most people I think know you. So quick introduction to your site and the importance of the domestic market to your business. And Sisa, of course, you're going to be talking on a different level, but for the two attractions. So go for it. Let's start with you, Louise. Oh, okay. Let's start with Ingrid while Louise logs in. Hi, Ingrid.
Hello. I actually did hope Louise would start because her domestic numbers are really impressive. The Two Oceans Aquarium sees about 55% domestic visitors every year. Of those, I would say 30 are local, so Cape Town. How's my sound? Am I echoey again?
No, you're good.
You're right.
We can hear you. Yeah.
So the domestics are extremely important to us. I would say really that all our exhibit development is with the local in mind, all our experiences, all our activations that we do. The bulk of the marketing budget goes into the local market. And they keep us honest. We really find they're our best critics. The locals will tell us if we do something wrong. They talk to us all the time. So absolutely have the locals in mind. We try to reach out to communities as well through education work with our nonprofit partner and through other activations, beach cleanup, etc. So we try to be very active with the domestic market, and we're also fortunate in that a lot of school kids, that's the first time they come to the aquarium. So we get to travel on a very, very long lifetime journey with the local as well. We get, the first time we see them is when they're kids, and then we get to really spend hopefully the rest of their lives with them.
Yeah. Louise, you're fading in and out quite a bit. Perhaps answer us very quickly for the Johannesburg Zoo, what percentage is domestic market and why are they important to you?
Okay. Unfortunately, we've lost Louise. We'll try and get her back. As we know, there's connectivity issues with these Zoom calls. So shall we move on?
So let's move on. So Sisa, the domestic market, why is that important for tourism in South Africa? I think you're on mute.
We need you
maybe. Or maybe we're on mute on this side, I don't know.
We're just having an issue with sound, so we can't actually, there's no audio.
Ingrid, you need to put together a PowerPoint on the domestic market.
Where are we
20 slides, Ingrid. We're relying on you.
Tell us, while Cisa's figuring himself, Tinyiko, I mean, the domestic market for the V&A waterfront.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge.
I mean, we are, while the local market is critical, as it's the domestic market is equally essential. We pride ourselves on being a neighborhood within Cape Town and within South Africa. So it's and being a quintessential, authentic South African neighborhood. So it's really important for us to be a space for locals and for South Africans.
So we haven't rehearsed this. I'm going to put you on the spot. The most common comment I get, the V&A waterfront, it's for tourists, or it's so touristy. And my reply is always, well, you guys get what, 28 million visits a year?
To about 22.
22 million visits a year, of which we have 2 million international visits a year. So ergo, by definition, it's got to be domestics. And that perception must be frustrating.
You know what? It can be frustrating. Yes. I mean, I'm not from Cape Town. I'm not a Cape Townian. I'm not a local Cape Townian. I'm from Johannesburg. And what I'm seeing is a space where there's a lot of opportunity. So as a marketer, what I see are the opportunities to isn't so much re-educate, but to really surface those authentic local stories that can shift that perception. But I also think there's a beauty in being a space where tourists can come and visit, right?
Of course,
where they do feel comfortable. But we want to really create an experience that's hyper-local for them. And what we need to start off with is making sure that we appeal to and cater to the needs of our local and domestic audiences.
Sisa, are you with us? Can we test your sound? Oh, no, we're still not hearing you. Okay, Ingrid, she's got the
Ingrid?
PowerPoint ready.
Yes. Something that I just really also want to say to add on to what Taniko is saying is I think that having a loyal local base actually really stimulates international tourists as well.
Yes.
You know, we know with authentic travel, the tourists want to do what the locals do. So if you have a really, really strong domestic base using their word of mouth and their ambassadorship as a proudly Cape Townian or proudly local sort of tourists themselves, I think they do a lot of the marketing work for us on the international front as well. Another reason to really woo them and keep them coming.
You know, I agree with you totally. I know when you go to a restaurant and when you're traveling, you look around, and if there's other locals there, you say, oh, I found a really local, authentic place.
Yeah.
If there's a whole lot of tourists there, you think it's inauthentic. And in fact, that's not always true at all. You know, it could still be authentic. It's just that there's a whole lot of tourists there.
Yeah.
So that interplay is always interesting. So what are some of the, we're down to you now. You're our keynote speaker for the final session.
Pretend we're having a glass of wine.
I love it.
Chilling at a restaurant. Just having a conversation.
What are some of the successful interventions you've done to address the domestic market? You realize you're also now on the panel,
good.
right?
I'm easy. Let's do this.
I've got to say, over the last couple of years, it's such a simple thing we did, but we introduced a free birthday visit for South Africans. Really, our objectives were very clear, rolling out that project. We wanted to see first-time visitors, and we wanted to see accompanying packs. And we've had really fantastic results. 43% in the last sort of financial year were first-timers of that program, and they brought an average of 2 people with them. Obviously, there's also the nice database growth, but knowing what I know about the incredible experience that our locals then have, thanks to Alicia and her team, that's just another snowball of positivity for us. And accessibility, I think people feel like that's not quite the same as I don't see it quite the same as, it's free entry. It is really a special occasion. Making a memory on your special day at the aquarium, I think it's wonderful for us. So very simple to roll out, very easy to get sign on internally. Everyone, all the staff members from top to bottom are very excited about the offering. So just a very easy thing that we did that really has worked.
I think also the trend as in-home entertainment has grown at the expense of time and money spent on out-of-home entertainment. What research has found is that people leave home to socialize, locations-based socialization. And so finding reasons to, one of the reasons to socialize is celebrations, whether it's birthdays or anniversaries or whatever it might be. Okay. Taniko, do you think the domestic market has different drivers or?
The point I was actually going to make in addition to what you've shared, Ingrid, is, you know, we tend to look at these audiences as homogenous groups. And we've got Sisa back. But we tend to look at the domestic and local audiences as just homogenous groups. And if there's one thing I've learned from this entire conversation, and something that I'm really passionate about, is to really dig into the psychographics, beyond just the demographics, of truly understanding what are the distinctive differences between a visitor who's coming from Johannesburg versus someone from Mpumalanga or Durban, and what is a local audience? Because even if you just scan the Cape Town landscape, what you find is a very complex, nuanced type of a need and customer base.
And none of us want to be shoved into a box. Sisa, are you with us now?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me this time.
You are. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight in and ask you one of these questions. So I'd like to understand is, what do you, I think Taniko's made a great point, is that the domestic market is not homogenous. But if I go back to one of the original questions I was going to ask you is, do you think the domestic visitor is different to the international visitor? Do they have fundamental different needs, or are they quite similar? What are we...
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I was starting to think there was a conspiracy here. It seemed like I'm the thorn amongst the roses, basically, you know, so happy to be in this company. And I just want to say off the bat, well done to AAVEA. It's a great conference, and we are so proud to be part of it. So yes, domestic tourism is extremely important. And I think if you look at the architecture of many countries around the world, they built on a strong domestic sector overlaid by international one. And we certainly, as South Africa, we want to ensure that remains in place and grows essentially from year to year, essentially, right? And you are right. The domestic market is different from international market in a couple of things. One, by the way, I'm a self-confessed data freak. So when I heard people speak about data, I get excited, essentially, right? And if you look at some of the nuances, you look at issues around duration, right? In terms of number of days that an average domestic relative to international spend, the number of times they go on holiday as well, and also the spend that they have. So you got to make sure that you actually understand your customer and ultimately guide them or show them the various parts that they want to see as well.
I know SAT publishes really useful information, actually great amount of research. So if you on domestic tourism and international tourism, it's really useful to go onto the SAT website for that. What do you think, I'm going to start with you, Ingrid, are some of the barriers for the domestic markets, the barriers for visitation? But difficult having just listened to Colleen's, because now we know we should be thinking in 4 different groups, but, you know.
Definitely, I think in Cape Town specifically, perhaps a barrier to aquarium visitation specifically would be just the incredible amount of competition we have, which is great for all of us. But, you know, I went to Monterey Bay Aquarium, highlight of my life last year. And people go to Monterey to go to the aquarium, right? So this captured audience. So I think for us, a nice opportunity is the competition around us and, of course, the partnerships that can come from that. For the domestic visitor specifically, I think perception of value versus price is something we have to work against all the time. It came up a few times today, and I was really glad to hear that our instincts are right in that you price what you think the experience is worth. But I do think there's a perception problem. I think it's probably very similar to the cableway, where people might not know exactly what it costs, but they think it's expensive. I think, I think that would be the 2 things that stand out for me.
And for you, Sisa, I mean, has there been any research done as to what's domestic market? And again, we understand we've put a big pot of 54 million people into one pot here. What some of the barriers are to attraction visitation specifically? We're talking visitor attraction specifically, if we can, yeah.
Sure. I mean, you've got to look at the context of South Africa, that we still have to inculcate a sense of travel and wonder in many South Africans. The majority of South Africans, hardly about 30, 40 years ago, needed passes just to move from one city to the next. So mobility is not something that's ingrained within. And secondly, as a child, you know, you observe things about travel and curiosity from your parents. So we really want to instill this element of being able to travel, you know, the country. And also, you know, one of the wonders about South Africa, we're such a diverse country that you can't look at all 55, how many are we now, 58 million, you know, in one single homogeneous view.
Yeah.
And how then you start to dish out various things to various groups so that, you know, when either you're watching an advert or when you see something, you can identify yourselves within it as well. And I think these are some of the things that we are teasing out to make sure that we can deliver what is appropriate. And then lastly as well, is that I also don't like to talk about price, but I like to talk about a value proposition, right? And what the environment we're in now gives everyone the opportunity to press the reset button and essentially put value propositions that are appropriate to the target audience in the times that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. You've touched on something that's quite close to my heart, is that I think for, let's call it, in Colleen Dillenschneider's words, it was non-museum goers or non-attraction visitors. There are barriers that are both structural. So if I think of some of our sites, they literally are tall walls and big doors, which are meant to be imposing and give you a sense of arrival, but can be quite intimidating if you've never been into a museum before. And equally, I noticed, I mean, it's years ago now that I was CEO at the Cableway, but we had a special there, and you had to cut out a thing from a newspaper, and it gave you 60 Rand a head, which at the time was still quite a lot of money. And the amount of people that were in the queue and wouldn't let go of that piece of paper. And when I said, well, you don't need it. When you get to the front,
you're good.
You're good. But they were worried that they'd misread it. They were worried that someone's going to turn them away. So there was this feeling of not actually feeling they have a right to go, you know, an ownership of, I can pay a ticket, I can go.
It is confidence, you know, and we can't assume that it is something that everyone generally has as well. And again, if you've never been part of a journey or an activity, either with a school or a parent or someone close, Just because you may have the income now doesn't mean you have the confidence. No one wants to look like an idiot, as an example, walk into a space, which way to go to,
Yep.
etc. And I think these are the things then that we have to be cognizant of in terms of understanding the audience that you are, trying to speak to, and having value propositions that actually speak to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to add to that because I think by virtue of this association focusing on attractions and experiences, it's quite easy for us to kind of think about things in a very myopic way. But we need to also think about the holistic journey. So, Sisa, you spoke about accessibility as people are traveling to a destination. Then what happens between you landing or arriving at your destination and getting to the attraction? Like, what is the nature and the quality of experience before people walk through your doors, and what are the perceptions of the overall destination that you're experiencing, and how what does that how does that how does that affect ultimately what they experience of your attraction?
Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable on a day off.
Absolutely.
So how comfortable are you making your first time visitors feel, basically? Do they see people like you, like me there?
Correct.
Do they feel a sensitivity to their needs?
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's
Yeah,
also
I mean,
very
look-
important.
Sorry, Ingrid, yeah?
Sorry. I think that representation is very important for me as a creative marketer, to really focus on who do we show at the aquarium, and is there a authenticity and a balance to that representation. So without becoming contrived, let's also represent all of our visitors in our marketing material and our communications material.
Absolutely. Sisa, you had a comment?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's got to start from an early age, and I think I look back on the days about how to instill this, even at school level, where children start to actually visit sites, and it's amazing what it does then in terms of, again, the confidence part and also knowing what's there, and then ultimately, I mean, that's something I want to always talk about is how do we find a way of actually sequencing out our school holidays? Part of the problem is that we all go on holiday at the same time, right? So we're all trying to fit into the same space in that short space of time, and that obviously pushes price up, just price inflation. And again, if you had staggered this out, you actually take out the troughs and peaks and have a bit more consistency across the board. But it's a part of a bigger conversation, but definitely something worth considering.
Sisa, you've made AAVEA proud and happy to hear you talk about staggered school holidays. We've been running a campaign and pushing for it for 2 years. It's one of the simplest and biggest levers we've got to actually get more domestic visitors, because of course it's spread over a greater period, and for operators it means they get a 14th month, because your December is always the busiest month of the year. So it's an all-round win-win situation. So we're kind of out of time now. I think one last quick question is, we don't yet know how visitor behavior will change post-COVID. We had Jakob talked to us at the start of the day, which feels like a million miles away now, because Europe is open. So it was amazing to get some insights from him, and we can take some leads from there. But is there any understanding or expectations we have of how our visitor behavior will change? Greater demand, lesser demand? We know discretionary spend will be under pressure. Let's start with Ingrid, and then I'll let Sisa have the last word.
The way I see it and the way I'm preparing myself is that we're looking at 3 sort of segments. The first is going to be the people who are just dying to get out, looking for something to do, quite fearless or careful, but not fearful. The second group are the ones who may wait for a vaccine or a level 0 if something like that comes. So, so very, very cautious people, perhaps living with comorbidities or elderly people. And then there's the people who need the social proof in the middle, who's going to wait and see what everyone else does. So we're definitely expecting a little bit of a deflation based on that instinct of visitation. I mean, I mentioned, we're 55% domestic. And 30% Cape Town. So if we get everyone in, we're still not looking at a fantastic 6 months coming. And I don't think we will see 100% of previous visitation. But that's going to make activations really important. I mean, Louise has, at the zoo, they have an incredible program. They have trots, they have picnics, they have evening events, they have fireworks. So I think those kind of event-specific activations as well, giving people different reasons to come to your attraction other than just the standard offering, which may be fantastic, will also be a way to reinvigorate people to revisit. Come when it's quieter, pay a bit of a premium, but come in the evening, that kind of thing. So I think we will need to be creative about attracting people beyond our standard message.
Yes. Well, it speaks to the previous speaker who said that the social pressure to go because your friends are going or grandma wants to go. That's what you're speaking to. Sisa, we'll give you the last word and then we'll...
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we have to be absolutely obsessed about understanding the changing consumer behavior. And here's the trick with that. It's changing on a daily basis because consumers are getting new data points every single day, right? So just when you think you have it, something else happens, basically. You are right. We're also learning lessons from the Northern Hemisphere about what not to do, mostly, actually.
Yeah.
And again, all of this is changing. Now, you start to understand the different segments of it, the elderly behave very differently from the ones that are single, from the ones that actually have families, etc., etc. But the one thing that actually brings everything together...
Load shedding. Load shedding.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
No. Motion sensors. So clearly I'm not working hard enough, right? So the key thing there then is about building trust, right?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate end of the day. Trust that people can get out of their homes and go and consume tourism or any sites and activity that does not put any risk on their health and the pandemic and everything else there. Because if there is no trust, we'll open the doors, but no one will come. And I think we've got to get that equation right. First of all, saying it is safe for you and your family to travel through, inform and educate the consumer so they know what to demand at the different places. And then thereafter, give the push about the options and everything else there.
Yeah, thank you, Sisa. I think trust is exactly the new key word for us to play with. Thank you so much for joining us. And Sisa, before you go, a special thanks. It's thanks to South African tourism sponsorship that this conference is able to take place. And particularly, there were a number of people that SAT sponsored to join this conference free of charge. So thank you so much for that. It's made a big difference for us, and we appreciate it.